So I was chatting with my college roommate earlier today, talking about my technology review that I did yesterday. And she made a comment like, oh, I miss those days when things were simpler and slower. And I got to thinking, yeah, me too. And my previous job, before I retired, things were really complicated there. So I had three additional, three additional email addresses besides the one, my personal email address. Move. And three different systems that I couldn't get to from home. And they all had crazy password requirements. Like they were the rules for the passwords were so complex that by the time you figured out how to come up with a password that matched all of the criteria, it kind of looked like you were trying to cover up like a swearing streak or something. You know, special characters and highs, uppers and lowers and numbers, and nothing could even remotely resemble a word. Anyways, yeah, that was complicated. So many passwords today, right? At least with passwords I have now, I have a way that I can store them securely and access them securely as long as I don't forget the one big password. But at work, we weren't allowed to do that. Everything had to be all up here, all memorized. And you had to change them like every, 30 days or 45 days. It was ridiculous. And you couldn't repeat anything that you had used like for the prior 2 years or something. It was insane. So yeah, I don't miss those password requirements. And so as I was thinking about passwords, it reminded me of an old TV game. Tell me if you know this one. It was called Password. So the premise of this game was there would be two teams. And there was like this little, supposed to look like a computer monitor, which they didn't exist back then, so I'm not quite sure what it was, like a little TV screen. And so these two people were sitting at a table, and one person was looking at the screen, and the other person couldn't see the screen. So that was one team. And then there was another table that had two people, same scenario. So the host would announce at the beginning of each round, the password is, and then they would display it on the screen. He wouldn't say it. So you, the home audience, could see what the word was, and then the people on the two teams that had the screen facing them, they could see what the word was. And the goal of the game was you had to get your teammate to guess the word, but you could only give one word clues. So it started off, there were 10 points to be earned. And if you gave one word clue and the person, your teammate, answered correctly, then you got 10 points. But if they didn't, then it went to the other team. And they had an opportunity to give another one-word clue, and then their teammate had to try to guess what the password was. But every time another clue was given, the point value would drop until it was like down to 0. Well, it worked out great if both of the people who were giving clues were on the same wavelength. And it worked really good if the person giving the clue and getting the clue were on the same wavelength. But, there's many meanings for many words. And sometimes it got really hilarious. Like you weren't allowed to do any kind of gestures or, give any kind of clues like that. You could do inflections with your voice, like red. The implication being that it was like the opposite of red, but that was a bad idea because maybe I should have done white and black. Anyways, I love that game. I love anything that has to do with words. I love Scrabble and Pictionary and just about any kind of game that has to do with words I love. So that was one of my favorite TV programs was Password. Well, they made a home version that you could play at home. And it came in a box, and there were these cards, like little cardboard strips, and they had words on them, but then like the words were in, I guess the words were in blue, but then they were typed over in red. So if you were just looking at the card, you couldn't read it. You had to put it in this little secret sleeve. And the sleeve, you would pull the card up, and then there was a piece of red, like cellophane that you looked through. So when the red cellophane was looking at the word, it blotted out the red and you could see the blue word. So that was what the password was. And same thing, you did two teams or however many teams you wanted, and you took turns giving clues, and then the points deprecated each time. Well, my father was not a game person. He pretty much hated games, but he loved things that had to do with words. Like when I was a little kid, he and I played the dictionary game, which didn't exist at the time except between us, but he would say a word, and if I didn't know what it meant, I'd go look it up, and then I'd come back and use it in a sentence to prove to him that I knew what it meant. And that was fun for me. Yeah, I'm kind of a nerd like that. So anyways, back to the password game. So that was one of the games that we would take with us in the car, because it was one of the few games that my dad would be willing to play. So you've got mom and dad in the front seat. By the way, hi mom. My mom watches these every day. She said it's like having a visit with her daughter. Hi mom. So mom and dad in the front seat, brother and I in the back seat. Hi Paul, he watches these too. So we would pit, one against the other. Usually it was my mom and my brother versus my dad and I. So it was my dad and I's turn. And I looked at the word, and I was so excited because I knew the perfect clue that we could get 10 points. And we'd only have to give one clue, and we'd get the word, and then we would win that round. I was so excited. So when it was time for me to give the clue. And the password was deal. D-E-D-E-A-L. Deal. So my 7-year-old self thought the perfect clue, I would use the voice inflection, and my dad would be sure to get the word, and we would win. So I said, bargain. And my dad immediately, without barely taking a breath, says, basement. What? What does basement have to do with bargain? It was like, well, of course, a bargain basement. In the store, when they have, leftover stuff, they put it all down in the basement, then that's when they have all the deals. Deal! That was the word! Anyways, I was so upset. I was so mad. My brother and my mother just thought it was hysterical. They laughed uncontrollably for an undisclosed amount of time. But anyways, that was my recollection of slower days when password meant something drastically different than it means today. So I hope you enjoyed that little stroll down memory lane. And I hope that when you have to come up with your next password, maybe you'll think to play a word game with a loved one in your family and enjoy the password is and give some clues and see how well you can get your teammates to guess. So that's it for tonight. Take care and God bless.